The longship's prow sliced through the churning sea, cutting a path through the mist as if carving destiny itself. Leif Krageson stood at the helm, his fist clenched around the ornate hilt of his father's sword. His knuckles whitened with each crash of wave against hull, each distant rumble of thunder. The raid had been successful, their fourth this season, yet the hollow victory sat like poison in his gut. "The gods favor us," shouted Halvard, his blood brother since childhood, raising his axe to the sullen sky. The other warriors roared in agreement, their beards dripping with sea spray, their leather armor still stained with the blood of fallen Saxons. But Leif remained silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The Krageson name demanded vengeance, had demanded it since the day the Oskarsdottir clan had slaughtered his father and 2 elder brothers during what should have been a peaceful thing assembly. 5 summers had passed since then, and with each raid, each kill, Leif had sought to fill the void with glory and blood, to honor his father's memory through the endless cycle of revenge. "What troubles you, Leif?" Halvard asked, lowering his voice as he approached. "We return with silver, slaves, and stories to warm us through winter. Your name will be praised in the Skald songs." "Songs feed neither the living nor the dead," Leif replied, his fingers tracing the intricate knotwork on his sword pommel, the same sword that had failed to protect his father when the Oskarsdottir betrayal came. "My father's spirit walks restless in the shadows. I have sworn to send every last Oskarsdottir to hell before I seek my own place in Valhalla." Halvard nodded gravely. "And so you shall. But even Odin rests between battles." The ship lurched suddenly as a massive wave struck the starboard side. The men stumbled, cursing the sea and the storm that approached. Leif steadied himself against the mast, his weathered face turned toward the dark clouds gathering above. Something stirred within him, a premonition, perhaps, or the watchful eye of the Norns weaving his fate into their tapestry. "Land," he cried Ulf from his perch near the bow. "An island to the west." "It lies not on our course," Halvard said, looking to Leif for guidance. "The storm comes swiftly," Leif replied, studying the churning clouds. "We seek shelter until it passes. Set course for the island." As they approached the rocky shores, Leif felt a strange tingling at the nape of his neck, as if invisible fingers traced runes of warning there. This was no ordinary island, its jagged peaks reached toward the sky like the spears of fallen warriors, and a strange mist clung to its cliffs despite the wind. "This place feels touched by the gods," murmured Eric, the youngest of their crew, his hand instinctively forming Thor's hammer over his heart. "Or by the Jotnar," added Torvald, the oldest raider, whose one remaining eye had seen more winters than any man aboard. "Be wary, Leif Krageson. Not all shelters welcome those who seek them." They found a protected cove on the eastern side of the island, a natural harbor that seemed carved by Njord himself. As the men secured the longship, Leif leapt ashore, his hand never straying far from his sword. The air tasted different here, salt mixed with something sweeter, something ancient. "We make camp here," he commanded. "Halvard, take 3 men and scout the ridge. The rest prepare shelter and fire. The storm will be upon us before nightfall." As his men dispersed to their tasks, Leif walked along the shoreline, his boots crunching on black pebbles that gleamed like polished obsidian. The island's strangeness called to him, not as a threat, but as a mystery. For a man who had lived by the simple truths of steel and vengeance, mystery was an unwelcome companion. A flash of movement caught his eye, something in the water beyond the rocks. Leif narrowed his gaze, hand dropping to his sword hilt. "There again!" A pale shape beneath the waves, too large for fish, too graceful for driftwood. Without hesitation, he clambered over the slick rocks, following the coastline to a secluded inlet where the sea formed a natural pool. The mist was thicker here, swirling around his ankles like living tendrils. And then he saw her. A woman swam in the center of the pool, her long golden hair flowing around her like sunlight captured in water. But she was not alone. Alongside her, twisting and coiling through the water, were two massive serpentine creatures, sleek, scaled, with fins like translucent sails along their spines. They moved in perfect harmony with the woman, as if they were dancing to music only they could hear. Leif stood transfixed, forgetting even to breathe. The woman turned, sensing his presence, and their eyes met across the water. Hers were the green of summer leaves, bright against her pale skin. For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, they stared at one another, the blood-soaked Viking warrior and the mysterious woman who swam with sea dragons. Then one of the creatures hissed, its long neck rising from the water, and the spell was broken. Leif reached for his sword, but the woman placed a hand on the dragon's neck, calming it with a whispered word. She moved toward the shore, the dragons following protectively on either side. "You need not draw steel here, Northman," she called, her voice carrying clearly across the water, speaking his language with an accent he could not place. "Unless you bring war to my shores." "I bring only a ship seeking shelter from the storm," Leif answered, his hand still resting on his sword pommel. "What manner of witch are you, to command the beasts of the deep?" The woman laughed, a sound like silver bells that stirred something forgotten within Leif's battle-hardened heart. "I am Gyda Oskarsdottir, and these are not beasts but friends and guardians. And you stand upon no ordinary island, warrior." The name struck Leif like a physical blow. Oskarsdottir, the blood of his sworn enemies flowed in her veins. The oath he had made over his father's grave echoed in his mind, to destroy every last member of the clan that had betrayed his family. "Oskarsdottir," he growled, drawing his sword. "The gods have delivered my vengeance to me." But as he stepped forward, both sea dragons surged from the water, positioning themselves between him and Gyda. They hissed in unison, steam rising from their nostrils, their eyes glowing with an intelligence that gave Leif pause. Gyda did not flinch from his drawn blade. "What quarrel could a stranger have with my name? I have lived on this island since I was a child. Your clan slaughtered my father, Krage the Fair, and my brothers at the summer thing 5 years past," Leif said, his voice tight with hatred. "I am Leif Krageson, and I have sworn to send all Oskarsdottir to the afterlife." Recognition and something else, sorrow, perhaps, flickered across Gyda's face. "I was but a child when my father sent me away to this place. The blood feud between our families was ancient even then." She stepped closer to shore, the water lapping at her waist, revealing a simple linen shift that clung to her form. "But tell me this, Leif Krageson, if you strike me down, will it bring your father back? Will it ease the grief in your heart?" Her words, so simple and direct, pierced through the armor of hatred Leif had wrapped around himself for years. Before he could answer, shouts echoed from the direction of the camp. "Leif! Where are you?" Halvard's voice carried over the rocks. "The storm comes faster than we thought." Leif hesitated, torn between his blood oath and the strange pull he felt toward this woman who swam with sea dragons. "This is not finished, Gyda Oskarsdottir. When I return, we will speak more of blood debts. When you return, Leif Krageson, perhaps we will speak instead of how blood feuds begin, and how they might end." With that, she sank beneath the surface, the sea dragons diving with her, leaving only ripples to mark their passing. The storm struck with a fury worthy of Thor himself. Rain lashed the makeshift shelters the warriors had constructed, and lightning split the sky with blinding forks. Leif sat beneath a crude linter, staring into the flames of their fire, his thoughts churning like the tempestuous sea around the island. "You have been silent since your return," Halvard observed, passing him a horn of mead. "Did you see something on your walk?" Leif took a long draught before answering. "I found an Oskarsdottir living on this island." A murmur passed through the men gathered around the fire. The blood feud was known to all, many had stood with Leif's father before his fall. One of our enemies, here. Torvald leaned forward, his weathered face eager in the firelight. The gods favor us. We shall take her head back as trophy. No. The word left Leif's lips before he had fully formed the thought. She is different. She swims with sea dragons, creatures I have never seen before, like the serpents of the deep but smaller, with an intelligence in their eyes. Witchcraft, Eric whispered, making the sign against evil. Perhaps, Leif conceded. But I would know more before I act. Our feud is with the men who betrayed my father, not with a lone woman who was a child when the blood was spilled. Halvard studied his friend's face carefully. This is not like you, Leif. Since when do you hesitate to strike down an Oskarsdottir? Since the gods placed her in my path with guardians from the sea, Leif replied. There is purpose here, though I cannot yet see it. I will speak with her again when the storm passes. The storm raged for 3 days, keeping the warriors confined to the cove. On the 4th morning, Leif woke to find the sky cleared, the sea calm as a mirror reflecting the clouds. Without a word to his men, he strapped on his sword and made his way back to the hidden pool where he had first seen Gyda. She was waiting for him, sitting on a rock at the water's edge, combing her long golden hair. The sea dragons were nowhere to be seen, but Leif kept his hand near his sword nonetheless. You return without drawing steel, Gyda observed, setting aside her bone comb. That is progress, Leif Krageson. I come seeking answers, not blood. At least, not yet. He remained standing, unwilling to lower his guard. How came you to this island? How do you command the sea dragons? I command nothing, she replied. The Lindorms, that is what my people call them, choose to stay with me. As for this island, my father sent me here for protection when I was 12 summers old. My mother's sister lived here as a seeress, communing with the old powers. She taught me her ways before passing to the other world. And your father? Oskar the Black-Hearted. The familiar hatred crept into Leif's voice. Gyda's eyes flashed. My father was Oskar the Wise to his people. And he is 8 winters dead, slain by a Krageson axe during a raid on our homestead. This news struck Leif like a physical blow. 8 winters? But that would be before the thing where your father died, Gyda finished for him. Yes. The blood feud was already old when you took up your sword, Leif Krageson. Each side has lost fathers, brothers, sons. Each believes justice guides their hand. A cold realization washed over Leif. He had never questioned the righteousness of his vengeance, never sought to understand the blood feud's origins. His father's death had been all the justification he needed. If what you say is true, then who struck first? Whose offense began this cycle of death? Gyda rose from her rock, approaching him with steady steps. That knowledge is lost to time, buried with the first men who drew steel against each other. But I can show you something that may help you understand. She extended her hand, palm up, an invitation. Leif hesitated, then placed his calloused hand in hers. Her touch was warm, alive, so different from the cold grasp of his sword hilt. Come, she said simply, leading him along a narrow path that wound up from the pool into the mist-shrouded hills. They walked in silence, climbing higher until they reached a stone circle atop the highest point of the island. 12 monoliths, weathered by countless storms, stood in perfect formation around a central altar stone. Runes Leif did not recognize were carved into each standing stone, and the air hummed with an energy that made the hair on his arms stand on end. This is a place between worlds, Gyda explained, guiding him to the center. My aunt taught me that here, one can sometimes glimpse the truth behind the veils we weave with our beliefs. What manner of seer is this? Leif asked warily, his warrior's instincts battling against the unfamiliar magic. Not seer as your people know it, Gyda replied. Something older. Something that remembers when our peoples were one, before the divisions of clan and blood. She released his hand and stepped to the altar stone, removing a small pouch from her belt. From it, she scattered herbs and what looked like crushed shells across the stone surface. Then she began to sing, a melody unlike any Leif had heard before, neither skaldic verse nor Christian chant, but something that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The mist thickened around them, swirling into shapes that shifted and changed with Gyda's song. Leif's hand moved instinctively to his sword, but something held him back from drawing it, some recognition that he stood in a place where steel had no power. Then the mist parted, and Leif gasped. Before them stood two men, transparent as spirits but clear enough to recognize. One wore the distinctive armor and cloak of a Krageson jarl from generations past, the other, the emblems of the Oskarsdottir clan. They clasped arms not in combat but in brotherhood, their free hands raising horns of mead in a toast. What trickery is this? Leif whispered. No trickery, Gyda answered softly. A memory of truth. Krage the Elder and Oskar Longsight, our ancestors from 6 generations past. Blood brothers who pledged their families to eternal friendship after surviving a storm at sea together. The vision shifted, showing the same men now facing each other with drawn swords, their faces contorted with rage. Between them lay a woman, beautiful even in death, her golden hair spread around her like a halo. Freyja the Fair, Gyda narrated. Beloved by both men, she chose Oskar but died in childbirth. Krage, mad with grief, accused Oskar of causing her death through neglect. The first blood of our feud was spilled that day, and it has not stopped flowing since. The mist swirled again, showing brief glimpses of battles, betrayals, and death spanning generations, Kragesons and Oskarsdottirs locked in an endless cycle of vengeance, each killing justified by the one before it, each death demanding another in return. Finally, the visions cleared, leaving Leif and Gyda alone in the stone circle once more. Leif found himself on his knees, overcome by the weight of history and the futility of the hatred that had defined his life. 6 generations, he said hoarsely. 6 generations of death over a woman who would weep to see what her love caused. Gyda knelt beside him, her green eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. And will you add another generation to the count, Leif Krageson? Will you draw your sword against me to avenge deaths that themselves were vengeance for other deaths? For the first time since his father's murder, Leif felt the foundations of his purpose crack and shift. The righteous fury that had driven him seemed hollow now, a flame fed by nothing but its own heat. I do not know another way to be, he admitted, the confession torn from somewhere deep within him. I have lived for vengeance so long. Then perhaps it is time to learn a new way to live, Gyda suggested, her voice gentle but firm. Come. Your men will wonder where you are. As they descended from the stone circle, a commotion echoed from the direction of the cove. Shouts of alarm and the clash of weapons carried clearly through the morning air. Your Lindorms! Leif exclaimed, breaking into a run with Gyda close behind. They arrived to find chaos. One of the sea dragons had emerged near the longship, where several of Leif's men had been making repairs. Mistaking it for an attack, the warriors had surrounded the creature with spears and axes. The Lindorm hissed in distress, its scaled body coiling defensively, fins flaring in warning colors. Stop! Leif commanded, pushing through his men. Lower your weapons. The warriors hesitated, looking between their leader and the sea dragon in confusion. Elise! Gyda called, hurrying past Leif to place herself between the Lindorm and the warriors. Be calm, my friend. They meant no harm. The sea dragon, Earlys, apparently, relaxed slightly at Gyda's touch, though its wary eyes remained fixed on the armed men. Leif, Halvard stepped forward, his axe still raised. What madness is this? The beast nearly capsized our ship. She was curious, not attacking, Gyda explained, stroking the Lindorm's neck. The Lindorms are guardians of this island. They mean no harm unless threatened. And we are to take the word of an Oskarsdottir. Torvald spat, his single eye narrowed in suspicion. Leif, have you forgotten your oath? This woman's blood is forfeit to your father's shade. The warriors murmured in agreement, their expressions hardening as they looked at Gyda. Leif felt the weight of their expectations, the pull of his sworn oath, tugging against the new understanding that had taken root within him. I have forgotten nothing, Leif said carefully, positioning himself beside Gyda. But I have learned much. The blood feud between our families began 6 generations ago, over a death that neither side truly caused. We have been killing each other over a lie passed down through the years. Pretty words from an Oskarsdottir witch, Torvald growled. She has enchanted you, Leif. She has shown me truth, Leif countered. And I will not spill her blood for the sake of a vengeance that has no end. Halvard lowered his axe, studying his friend's face. You speak with conviction, Leif. But what of your oath? What of your father's honor? My father's honor is not served by endless killing, Leif replied, the certainty in his heart growing stronger with each word. If I continue this feud, my sons will one day stand where I stand, and their sons after them. When does it end, Halvard? When do we say enough blood has been spilled? A tense silence fell over the gathering. The Lindorm had calmed completely under Gyda's touch, its serpentine body now floating peacefully in the shallows. From the sea behind it, the second Lindorm emerged, swimming gracefully to join its companion. The storm has passed, Leif continued, addressing all his men. We can return home with the treasure we've already won. But I will not leave this island with more blood on my hands, especially not the blood of a woman who has shown me nothing but truth when she could have let me drown in my own hatred. The warriors exchanged glances, centuries of tradition warring with the unexpected path their leader proposed. It was Halvard who finally broke the silence. I have followed you into battle many times, Leif. I will follow you in peace as well, if that is your choice. He sheathed his axe deliberately. But the clan will not easily accept an end to the blood feud. The Oskarsdottir still raid our settlements. How do you answer that? With strength but not hatred, Leif said. We defend what is ours without seeking to destroy them utterly. He turned to Gyda. Are there others of your clan who might listen as I have listened? Who might see the futility of this endless cycle? Gyda's expression grew thoughtful. My cousin Hakon leads our clan now. He is young but wise beyond his years. He lost his father to a Krageson blade and his mother to grief. He might listen, if approached with respect rather than steel. Then I will seek him out when I return, Leif declared. Not as an enemy, but as a man tired of burying his kin. That evening, as the warriors prepared the longship for departure at dawn, Leif found Gyda standing alone on the rocky outcropping overlooking the cove. The setting sun painted her golden hair with fire, and something stirred in Leif's chest, something he had never allowed himself to feel amidst the consuming flames of vengeance. You are leaving, then, she said without turning. With the morning tide, Leif confirmed, coming to stand beside her. But I will return, Gyda Oskarsdottir. You have shown me a truth I cannot unsee. And what will you do with this truth? She asked, finally facing him. Your clan will not easily set aside generations of hatred. No, Leif agreed. But change must begin somewhere. If not with me, then with whom? If not now, then when? He hesitated, then added, I would ask you to come with me, to stand beside me when I speak to your cousin Hakon. Your words may carry weight, mine cannot. Gyda's eyes widened in surprise. You would trust an Oskarsdottir at your back among your own people? I would trust you, Gyda, Leif replied simply. The clan name matters less than the heart that beats beneath it. A soft smile curved her lips. The Lindorms cannot leave these waters. They are bound to the island, as I have been bound to them since my aunt passed. Then I will return to you, Leif promised, reaching slowly to take her hand in his. When I have spoken with Hakon, when I have begun to turn the tide of hatred, I will come back to this island. If you will have me. And if you fail? Gyda asked softly. If the hatred proves too deep-rooted to change? Then I will still return, Leif said firmly. For in you, I have found something worth more than vengeance. I have found hope for a different future, one not written in blood. Gyda's fingers tightened around his. Then go with that hope, Leif Krageson. Carry it like a torch into the darkness our families have created. And know that I will be here, waiting, with hope of my own. In that moment, with the setting sun painting the world in gold and the distant calls of the Lindorms echoing across the water, Leif felt the weight of 6 generations of hatred begin to lift from his shoulders. The path ahead would not be easy, changing the course of a blood feud never was, but for the first time since his father's death, he looked to the future with something other than grim determination to kill and die. As dawn broke over the island the next morning, Leif's men pushed the longship back into the sea. The warriors were subdued, still processing their leader's unexpected change of heart, but none challenged him openly. Respect earned through years of shared battle did not dissolve in a single day. Gyda stood on the shore, the Lindorms flanking her like scaled guardians. As the ship pulled away from the cove, she raised her hand in farewell, and Leif matched the gesture from his position at the helm. You love her already, Halvard observed quietly, standing at his friend's shoulder. I hardly know her, Leif protested, though the words rang hollow even to his own ears. Sometimes the heart recognizes in an instant what the mind takes seasons to accept, Halvard replied with unexpected wisdom. The question is, what will you do with such recognition? Leif watched the island recede, Gyda's figure growing smaller until she was just a speck on the shore. I will do what I should have done years ago, he said firmly. I will seek to end this feud, not with steel but with words. And then I will return to her, not as a Krageson seeking vengeance against an Oskarsdottir, but as a man seeking a future with a woman who helped him see beyond hatred. Then may the gods grant you success, Halvard said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. For I would rather drink at your wedding feast than mourn at your funeral pyre. The journey home was swift, with favorable winds filling their sail as if the gods themselves approved of Leif's newfound purpose. When they reached their settlement, the reception was triumphant, at first. They had returned with plunder and without casualties, a successful raid by any measure. But when Leif stood before the clan's council and spoke of ending the blood feud with the Oskarsdottir, the celebration turned to stunned silence, then to angry murmurs. Have you forgotten your father's murdered body? Demanded Gunnar, the eldest of the council. Have you forgotten your brother's blood soaking the thin ground? No Krageson has ever spoken of peace with the Oskarsdottir dogs. And that is why we have been burying our sons and fathers for 6 generations, Leif countered, standing firm before the council fire. I do not forget my father or my brothers. But I ask you this, what honors their memory more, continuing an endless cycle of death, or being the one strong enough to end it? The debate raged for days. Some called Leif bewitched, others a coward. But a few, particularly among the younger warriors and the women who had lost husbands and sons, listened with thoughtful expressions. Halvard stood steadfastly by his friend, lending his respected voice to Leif's cause. Finally, after a week of argument, the council reached a compromise. Leif would be permitted to approach Gyda Oskarsdottir under a flag of truce to discuss terms for ending the feud. But he would not go alone. A delegation of warriors would accompany him, ready for treachery. "It is not ideal," Leif told Halvard as they prepared for the journey to Oskarsdottir territory. "But it is a beginning." More than anyone thought possible a moon ago, Halvard agreed. "You have planted a seed, Leif. Now we must see if it can take root in rocky soil." The meeting with Gyda Oskarsdottir was tense, with warriors from both sides gripping their weapons and watching for any sign of betrayal. But when Leif spoke of what Gyda had shown him, of the true origins of their feud and the pointless deaths that had followed, a flicker of recognition passed across Gyda's stern face. "My cousin always was wiser than the rest of us," he said finally. "I lost my father to your axe, Krageson. And I lost mine to your clan's treachery," Leif replied evenly. "We could trade such accusations until Ragnarok, but where would it end?" "It would end with one clan destroyed utterly," Gyda said, but there was weariness rather than bloodlust in his voice. "As it has been prophesied." "Prophecies can be misunderstood," Leif countered. "Perhaps the destruction foretold is not of one clan, but of the hatred between us." Days of negotiation followed, with both sides retreating to separate camps each night to confer among themselves. Slowly, painfully, terms began to emerge, boundaries respected, raid-free zones established, a process for addressing grievances that did not involve immediate bloodshed. On the final day, Gyda pulled Leif aside, speaking privately for the first time. "You have spoken much of my cousin Gyda. She lives still, then?" "She does," Leif confirmed. "On an island protected by sea lindorms, living as her aunt taught her?" "And you care for her?" Gyda observed, his eyes sharp. "A Krageson caring for an Oskarsdottir, the schools would make much of such a tale." "I do," Leif admitted, seeing no reason for deception. "Though I have known her but a handful of days." "Sometimes that is enough," Gyda said with unexpected gentleness. "My mother used to say that true connections between souls need no time to form, they simply recognize each other across the divide." "Does that mean you would not object if I were to return to her?" Leif asked carefully. A small smile touched Gyda's lips. "The peace between our clans is fragile, Leif Krageson. It may not survive the next harvest, let alone the next generation. But perhaps a bond between you and my cousin might strengthen it in ways our words and oaths cannot." He paused, then added, "I would not oppose such a union, provided your intentions are honorable and she wishes it as well." When the negotiations concluded, a fragile peace had been established between the clans for the first time in living memory. No one believed it would be easy. Too much blood had been spilled for trust to form quickly, but it was a beginning, a first step away from the path of mutual destruction. Leif wasted no time in preparing for his return to Gyda's island. He selected a small crew of trusted men, including Halvard, and a ship swift enough to outrun trouble if they encountered it. "You are certain of this course?" Halvard asked as they loaded supplies. "To bind yourself to an Oskarsdottir, even one who helped broker peace." "I am certain only that I must see her again," Leif replied honestly. "What comes after will be for her to decide as much as me." The journey to the island seemed both longer and shorter than before, longer in Leif's impatience to arrive, shorter in the favorable winds that filled their sail. When the familiar rocky shores finally appeared on the horizon, Leif felt his heart quicken in a way no battle had ever caused. As they approached the cove where they had sheltered before, Leif saw a figure standing on the shore, Gyda, her golden hair bright in the sunlight, the lindorms surfacing nearby as if heralding their arrival. Before the ship had fully beached, Leif leapt into the shallows, wading through the water toward her. Gyda started forward as well, hesitation giving way to joy as she recognized the peace in his expression. "You returned," she said when they stood before each other, close enough to touch yet both hesitating. "I promised I would," Leif replied, drinking in the sight of her. "And I bring news. Your cousin Hakon and my clan have agreed to terms of peace. It is fragile and new, but it is real." Wonder spread across Gyda's face. "You succeeded?" "Truly?" "For now," Leif said honestly. "The hatred of generations does not vanish in a season. But we have made a beginning." Gyda's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then the visions in the stone circle spoke truly. Change can come, even to the most ancient of feuds. "Change has already come," Leif said, finally reaching out to take her hands in his. "To me, at least. I came to this island seeking shelter from a storm and found instead shelter from my own hatred. You showed me a truth I could not ignore, Gyda Oskarsdottir." "And what will you do with this truth now, Leif Krageson?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I would build upon it," he answered, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "If you are willing. Hakon has given his blessing, should you wish to return with me, and not as an Oskarsdottir among enemies, but as my wife among a people learning to set aside old hatreds." Gyda's eyes widened. "Your wife? After so brief an acquaintance?" "Brief in days, perhaps," Leif acknowledged. "But in understanding? In the change we have wrought together? In that, I feel I have known you across lifetimes." He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Unless I have misread, his words were cut short as Gyda stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You have not misread," she said softly, then stretched up to press her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that surprised them both, a hunger not just for each other but for the future they might build together, a future not defined by the hatreds of the past. When they finally broke apart, Leif rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes, then?" Gyda laughed, the sound echoing across the water and causing the Lindorms to raise their heads in curiosity. "It is a yes, Leif Krageson. But there are conditions to my acceptance." "Name them," Leif said immediately. "The Lindorms," Gyda explained, glancing toward the sea dragons that watched them with intelligent eyes. "They cannot leave these waters, and I am bound to them as they are to me. I cannot abandon them entirely." Leif considered this. "Then we shall build 2 homes, one among my people, where we can help nurture the fragile peace, and one here, where we can return when the seasons allow." "You would do this?" Gyda asked, searching his face. "Divide your life between 2 worlds." "I would unite 2 worlds," Leif corrected gently. "Just as we have begun to unite 2 clans. The division is only in how we see it, not in how we live it." From the longship, Halvard called, "Does she accept you, then? Or must we drag you back to explain to the council why we returned empty-handed?" Leif turned, keeping one arm around Gyda's waist. "She accepts. And you may tell the schools to prepare their finest verses, for we will have a handfasting at the next full moon." Cheers erupted from the small crew, echoing across the cove. The Lindorms responded with musical calls of their own, as if blessing the union in their strange way. "There will be challenges," Gyda warned, though her smile never dimmed. "Not everyone will accept this change as readily as you have." "Then we will face them together," Leif promised. "As the first of our clans to choose love over hatred in 6 generations. Perhaps, in doing so, we break not just the cycle of vengeance, but also fulfill the prophecy your cousin mentioned, the destruction not of a clan, but of the enmity between them." Under a full moon 1 month later, Leif Krageson and Gyda Oskarsdottir stood before both their clans in a ceremony unlike any in living memory. Warriors who had sought to kill each other for generations now stood side by side, wary but willing to witness this unprecedented union. The handfasting was performed by both clan priests, binding Leif and Gyda's hands with cords of red for passion, white for purity of intention, and gold for prosperity. But it was the final cord, green, the color of new growth and healing, that held the most significance for those who understood what this marriage truly represented. With this binding, intoned the elder priest, two become one. Not just two people, but two bloodlines long divided. May the gods bless this union and the peace it heralds. As Leif and Gyda sealed their vows with a kiss, a strange sound echoed across the gathering, the musical call of sea lindorms, carried impossibly across the miles from Gyda's island, as if the very creatures of legend approved of this new beginning. The feast that followed was cautious at first, with Oskarsdottir and Krageson warriors eyeing each other suspiciously across the long tables. But as the mead flowed and the skald sang of new tales rather than old vendettas, the atmosphere gradually warmed. Near midnight, Leif found Hakon and Halvard sitting together, deep in conversation about fishing territories of all things. The sight of his blood brother and his new cousin by marriage finding common ground filled Leif with a hope he had never dared to entertain before. "You have done the impossible," Gyda said softly, coming to stand beside her new husband. "Look at them, enemies breaking bread together instead of breaking each other's skulls." "We have done this," Leif corrected, drawing her close. "And it is only the beginning." As the celebration continued around them, Leif and Gyda slipped away to the shoreline, where the moon cast a silver path across the dark waters. In the distance, they could just make out the silhouette of Gyda's island, where the lindorms waited for their return. "Do you think it will last?" Gyda asked, leaning against Leif's chest as they gazed out at the sea. "This peace we've started." "I think it will be tested," Leif answered honestly. "Old hatreds do not die easily. But we have shown that there is another way, that even the blood feuds of generations can be ended if enough people choose to end them." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "And in that choice, we find not weakness, but the greatest strength of all." Gyda turned in his arms to face him, her green eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Then let us be strong together, Leif Krageson. For our clans, for ourselves, and for those who will come after us." "For those who will come after us," Leif agreed, his hand drifting to rest gently on her belly, where their first child, half Krageson, half Oskarsdottir, but wholly a symbol of new beginnings, had already begun to grow. "May they never know the burden of hatred we carried for so long." And as they sealed this promise with a kiss, the distant call of the lindorms echoed once more across the water, a blessing from creatures of legend for a love that had accomplished what 6 generations of warfare could not, the healing of wounds so ancient, most had forgotten how they began.